Swift glintstone shard, glintstone pebble, great glintstone shard, glintstone comet shard, comet, night shard, night comet. Don't know which is best? Well, I'm on it. Hello, my fellow tarnished of sorcerous nature. Welcome today as I reveal the best spell, the best sorcery in Elden Ring. At least in terms of pure DPS and in terms of your standard press button fire magic blob at enemy, they go ow. Obviously, there is a huge variety of sorceries in this game with niche uses, and in certain situations, some come out, well, ridiculously on top. But certain situations does not a best spell make. If you could only ever have one sorcery memorized out of all of them, well, this one right here would be it. Well, this one or a Duelist Moonblade, but Duelist Moonblade is obviously a melee sorcery, so it's not really part of the category that we're testing today. In any case, there are a lot of options then. 8, in fact, standard fire blob of glintstone and enemy sorceries. I mean, technically 9 if you want to include Ice Crag, but the damage to FP doesn't compete with most of these, and obviously that's there for the frost build-up, though it is a very cheap, efficient sorcery, and definitely not to be overlooked, but it's not something we need to really take into consideration today. So, how are we going about this? What's the deal? Well, I mean, it was a lot of working out, let's just put it that way. I have worked out the damage per FP of every single one of these sorceries, along with how long they take to cast initially and how long they take to chain cast if you're spamming them, which lets us get an accurate representation of damage per second while using this sorcery to FP burned. Which is probably way more in-depth than we needed to go, but at least it lets me give you a mathematically, factually correct answer, and that's always nice. Now, I'm not going to go through every single sorcery here and give you the number rundown. I will put them all on screen, probably accompanied by some big booming noise to draw your attention, and that way you look at them, so those of you that have just got me on in a random tab on another browser while you're playing Elden Ring or so should probably swivel your head and have a look, that kind of thing. Yeah, there we go. So that's kind of where it breaks down. Interestingly, every single one of these, once you start spam casting, you fire one every second, irrelevant of the sorcery or its power. The only difference is wind-up time. The Swifts take 0.6 seconds, the normals, let's say, take a second, and the big, heavier Comet types take 1.3 seconds. So cast time kind of is superfluous here. Obviously the testing environment for all of this was no damage boosts, just a basic plus 10 glintstone staff with no extra effects, no casting speed increase, because the thing is, any sorcery or casting speed increase applies to all of these equally, so it doesn't change the results. So we'll keep things simple, using the birds as targets, but obviously damage is relative to the target you're hitting, but again, it's going to be relative between all of the sorceries against the given target, so target really doesn't matter, we just need a number for each of them. So as you can see, and as you might expect, the more damaging, the higher FP cost we go, the less efficient it is. The Pebble and the Shard basically draw for the most efficient spells, giving you 120 damage, at least against the birds, per FP. That's pretty cool. And then it drops all the way down to Comet and Night Comet at 55-ish damage per FP. But the thing is, that ignores the time to do that. One single Comet fired off is going to out-damage nearly 2.5 pebbles, which will take about 2.5 seconds longer to do. So in a situation where damage now is needed, obviously that's what the heaviest spells are there for. And in a world where we are high-level int sorcery builds, FP gets less and less of a concern. You start to have a fair reservoir of it, and the damage you do per time starts to become the much more important factor, especially in a world of infinite FP thanks to our wondrous physic. So, looking at this, essentially you use your pebbles to kill random mooks as you progress to the boss, and then Great Glintstone Shard is about the sweet spot for damage to FP to heavy cost spam ratio to burn them down quickly. However, there is one key factor that changes this that results in our best sorcery. Night Comet. This is glorious. It cost 24 FP, and against the bird test, that resulted in 54 damage per FP. Actually, the least out of everything here. But in the town of Sorcery in Caelid, which incidentally is also where you get Night Comet from one of the chests behind one of the magic barriers once you've lit one of the torches and can access it, in this town we call home. Sorry, I went a little bit Nightmare Before Christmas then. In this town there is a dead man over a balcony that you can access from the roof. He is holding a staff of loss, and it really is his loss. This is one of the many glintstone staffs that buff a school of sorcery. Normally they buff it in the range of 8 to about 15%, a little bump, nothing crazy. But for whatever reason, the Staff of Loss boosts invisibility sorcery, which is Night Shard and Night Comet, by 30%. That is absolutely massive because it stacks with all the other percent sorcery boosts. Which means if we hold the Staff of Loss in our left hand, and then our main casting glintstone staff in our right, likely Lusat's or the Regal Royal, then we get to blast off Night Comets with a 30% bump that doesn't apply to any of the other options here. And when you add in that 30% damage bump, suddenly this sorcery comes out on top. It doesn't become the most efficient damage to FP ratio, but it gives it enough of a lift that in a higher level build, you simply cannot do better damage per second, damage per cast, damage per time than spamming Night Comet. It is not worth charging it except on the very first cast when the enemy doesn't know about you, because you might as well get the more damage there, but then spamming 1 a second is going to have absolutely ludicrous results, and it will outshine any other option you have. As I said, every other sorcery is niche. It has different ranges, different functions, different situations. But this is your standard, universal, press the button, blob of damage, flies towards enemy, kills enemy. And in that context, you cannot do better than Night Comet with a Staff of Loss in your other hand for that 30% damage boost, and that's really awesome. It also comes with the utility that Night Comet passes through enemies and can cleave down foes in a line. Don't get me wrong, after you've hit a random enemy and they're on like no health, switch to a pebble or a shard, save some FP and finish them off. I'm specifically just using Night Comet here, but the fact remains that this is the winner. In terms of pure DPS, Night Comet is going to be the champion of your standard sorceries. And even if we expand it to every other sorcery, the only ones that can really compete is something like a Dueler's Moonblade with the added frostbite damage. And indeed, a Dueler's Moonblade, if you could only ever have 2 sorceries memorized, would comfortably take that second slot. But in terms of universal utility and most damage, Night Comet is the winner, and that's really quite interesting, thanks to just this randomly powerful amp from Staff of Loss. Because every other way to boost sorcery applies to every sorcery, so they kind of cancel each other out when testing here, but this staff is unique to just 2 sorceries, Night Shard and Night Comet. It doesn't even apply to the other invisibility school sorceries, which is even weirder, but hey, I thought you guys very much might find that interesting. A little bit of testing, a little bit of sorceress knowledge for you to digest, and that is hopefully going to make your lives a lot easier. Alrighty then, like if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and hit the bell to not miss more sorcery breakdowns, in-depth guides, builds, locations, funny bits, tips and tricks, you know the drill. Please consider supporting this channel and its continued existence and future on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, oh god.
Josh, cock and hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.